Well, hello there, students at Covenant Classical School. Again, this is Ted Wright from Epic Archaeology, and now I'm going to answer all of your questions that you have on Pompeii and the archaeological discovery of Pompeii. So, if you'll be patient with me, I'm going to work through all the questions. I'm going to list the questions. Some of the questions, obviously, are going to be doubled up because some of you asked sort of the same question. But so here we go. We're going to start with number one. We have about 33 questions, which is totally okay. We're going to work through these really quickly, and hopefully your questions will be answered. If you have any follow-up questions, then please ask your teacher, and she can get those questions to me, and I can get the answer to you later. Okay, the first question is from, I'm guessing this is Karis, K-R-I-S, or maybe it's Carice. I'm not sure if it's your teacher asking this question or if it's a student, but the question is, what is the most important thing you found at Pompeii? Okay, so to be honest with you, I actually did not go to Pompeii as an archaeologist digging. I actually went there as a tourist. But when I traveled there, I was with some friends that lived in Naples, in the nearby city of Naples, and they've been living there for years. They speak fluent Italian, and as it turns out, there was actually a dig going on in one of the streets of Pompeii. And so my friends told the archaeologist working there that I'm an archaeologist, and they actually allowed me to come inside of the fence and go down and take part in the excavation just for a few minutes. So when we did, we actually discovered a coin dating from about the second or first century BC. So I get to hold it in my hand. We're not exactly sure what Roman emperor, or not emperor, but rather Roman Caesar it was from. But anyway, really, really cool. So I would say that that's probably the most important thing that I've ever found at Pompeii, because it's the only thing I've ever found at Pompeii. But it's really cool to actually get to actually hold something in your hand that literally is over 2,000 years old. That's the cool thing about archaeology, is you get to touch something that someone hasn't ever touched for thousands of years, and that's really, really cool. Okay, second question is, William asks, what is archaeology? Well, we've already covered this before in the earlier video, but archaeology is the study of history by looking at artifacts. An artifact is anything that has been made or changed by a human. So pottery, this really big piece of pottery here, that's an artifact. Swords can be artifacts. Anything is an artifact. So archaeologists study the past by artifacts. Second question William asks is, what did the buildings in Pompeii look like? Well, if you saw the previous video, then you can see a lot of the photographs and images of what the buildings look like. They were really, really cool. Some of them were very elaborate. The villas were very, very ornately decorated with the frescoes and the mosaic floors. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, I would say that some of the buildings in Pompeii, some of the more wealthier clients and people who actually had these villas that were very wealthy, their houses are nicer than some of our houses today. So pretty cool. All right, Susanna asked, why did other people keep living on the volcano after it erupted? Well, actually, Susanna, they did not. They actually moved away, and the cities of Pompeii and the other two cities of Herculaneum and Stabia, and the other city was actually abandoned. So they did not actually continue to live around the volcano. Now, Naples did build up later, many years later, but so it's in fact it's a danger today that there are literally millions of people living under the shadow of Mount Vesuvius today. So it's a great concern by the authorities there living around Naples. So maybe that's what you mean. So hopefully that answered your question. Jack, can you show us a skeleton of what was found? Again, in the previous video, we talked about the differences between Herculaneum and Pompeii. The city of Herculaneum was actually closer to Mount Vesuvius. So when the volcanic flow hit through the city of through the city of Herculaneum, it would actually pretty much fry the people alive. So the only thing was left were their skeletons. So it's kind of gross, but you find skeletons only in Herculaneum, but you find body cast actually in Pompeii because it was a little further away. So it did kill them, but it did preserve their bodies when the ash fell on the bodies. So hopefully, Jack, that answers your question. Jack has another question. Have you ever found any diamonds or jewels on your digs? No, I have not. That would be nice, but even if I did, I could not keep them. I have to turn them over to the authorities. Reese asks, is Vesuvius still active? Yes, in fact, it is. In fact, every so often, there are eruptions and earthquakes in that area. So, yes, Reese, it is absolutely still active. And then Reese's second question, Reese has three questions here. So, Reese, you might be an archaeologist here. I don't know. Reese, what is the most valuable thing found in Pompeii? I've already covered it. Well, let me say the most valuable thing. Maybe you mean something different than Caris or Caris. Um, the most valuable thing. It's hard to say value is, um, you know, we would think that value has to do with like gold or whatever, and maybe that's what you mean. Um, so some people think the most valuable thing is pottery, which other people might not think is very valuable. But maybe perhaps you mean like as in relationship to monetary worth. And if that's the case, then there was quite a lot of jewelry that was found in Pompeii that did contain gold and emeralds and rubies and all kinds of beautiful precious stones. So I'm not exactly sure what the monetary value of those things are, but absolutely very, very valuable. Reese, the third question is, what is the best preserved thing found in Pompeii? I got to say, it's a toss up between the bread that I showed you on a previous slide, the freshly baked bread that was buried in ash, or the human bodies that were found in Pompeii. So quite remarkable. And by the way, there's still archaeologists are still excavating the city of Pompeii. It has not been fully excavated, so there may be something that they find in the future that's even more well preserved. Ace and Noah, what is the nicest jewelry found in Pompeii? Again, I'm not exactly sure what the nicest would be, but I think I may show some photographs of may have shown some photographs of that in the previous talk that I gave. But yes, there have been some quite beautiful pieces of jewelry that were found in Pompeii. And I got to say, I'm not a big jewelry fan, but if I were, I think the ancient worlds, such as the Romans and the Persians and some of the ancient civilizations, have made some of the most beautiful jewelry. My favorite jewelry of all is from ancient Egypt. They had some really amazing jewelry. They had entire falcons, birds, and vultures that their wings would spread over you in a necklace. It was really, really cool. Even the guys who wear these things. So a lot of bling there in the ancient world. Um, Ryan asked, name some things you saw on your last visit to Pompeii. And I think in the previous video, I showed you some things, but one of my things that there are a couple of things that I think really stood out to me. One was the amphitheater, and the other one was the House of Mysteries or the Villa of Mysteries. Well, very well preserved frescoes on that. And then, of course, the streets were just, I mean, to literally walk in a street of a city that literally was buried 2,000 years ago is just really awesome. So if you ever get the chance to go to Pompeii, I would encourage you to do that. It is just mind blowing how amazingly well preserved the city is. Um, and then Ryan also asked, where have you been in the world? That's a great question. I had to think about it. Okay, so Israel, and within Israel, I've been in the West Bank, in the PLO occupied, what they call the West Bank territory, which is not Israeli, it's Palestinian occupied. I've been to Turkey. I have been to Germany, Italy, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and I think that's it. There may be one I'm missing. I'm not sure, but yeah, those are some of the places that I've been in the world. Uh, Sutton, I think that's how you say that. Sutton, Suttyn, Sutton. Who found Pompeii in the first place? Well, it was lost for many, many years, but it wasn't until like the about the 1500s you could see things sticking out of the ash. The city was also reburied in the 4th century AD by another eruption. So the initial eruption buried the city of Pompeii in about 16 feet of ash. And then in the 4th century, there was another eruption by Mount Vesuvius that continued to bury the city further in the ash. So it get lost for probably about 1,500 years or so, 1,000 years. And then it was rediscovered in like the 1500s. But then, really, honestly, I would say the 1700s is when it really began to take off the exploration of Pompeii. Caitlin asked, did you find more in Rome or Pompeii? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Did I find more what? More artifacts? Because Rome is the thing about Rome is that it's a city that's buried, that's still a modern city, and you can drive cars around, but there's ruins all around Rome. So it's a different city and it's preserved in a different way. So Pompeii was buried in ash, so it was very well preserved. Whereas Rome is still a city that you can visit today with over a million people, several million people that live in Rome. So the ruins in Rome are, you have to kind of go around in the city, especially in the Roman Forum, which is the center of the ancient Roman world. And wherever they go to make a street or a road in Rome, they always find something because we've talked about the tell is an artificial mound of dirt. Well, under the streets of Rome today, there are still layers upon layers of the city, the ancient city of Rome, underneath the modern day city of Rome. So you're going to discover probably more in Pompeii because it was better well preserved. That's what I would say. That's kind of how I would answer that question. Roy asked, how many people survived in Pompeii? Again, the numbers are different. Um, let's see here. Excuse me, I skipped Caleb. Caleb asked, I have been to Rome. Have you ever been to Pompeii? Well, yes, I have. You saw pictures of it. Roy asked, how many people survived in Pompeii? The numbers are different depending on who you ask. I've seen numbers anywhere up to, 1,700 to 2,000, but I'm not exactly sure how many people really survived. Again, I'll have to go back and dig for that number, the exact number, to see because there's so many differences of opinion on it, depending on who you read. I've got several books on Pompeii, several books on ancient Rome, and all the numbers are different. So what I need to do is try to find an academic work that really digs into that number to see what the numbers are, give you a kind of a range. But probably about 2,000 people or so. That's kind of my ballpark idea of how many people survived, and it probably is less than that. Um, Rudder asked, how do they find silver, gold, and bronze? Well, the same way that they find any other artifact when you're digging in an archaeological site. They uh, conduct proper excavation and they dig down through the different layers or strata, and they will uncover the gold or silver as they go. Now, on some sites in Israel and other parts of the Near East, they actually use a metal detector. So I know that the sites I've worked on in Israel, we have actually a metal detectorist that actually goes through the site and can actually scan the dirt in the squares in which we're working to see if there's any metal in those squares. So that's sometimes how the gold or silver will be found, but primarily it's discovered by just doing traditional excavation techniques. Louise asked where the houses of Pompeii interesting to study. Was looking at the body holes interesting? First, the question is, were the houses of Pompeii interesting to study? Yes, absolutely. Probably my favorite thing at Pompeii were the actual villas themselves of the people who lived in them. And it's just amazing to think of the ornateness of these villas that people lived 2,000 years ago. I mean, the floor is just, I mean, you're walking on a work of art. These mosaic floors are so elaborate and so beautiful, and then the walls are painted in these frescoes that are still look like they were painted yesterday. So it's just amazing. I could just imagine what they would have looked like in their original state, and it would have just been absolutely beautiful to look at. Um, and then she asked, I think Ryan, I'm not if it's a boy or girl, Ryann. Um, where have you been? Oh, excuse me, I'm jumping around here. Sorry, lost my place. I jumped ahead. I jumped behind, actually. Where that? This is Louise. I'm sorry. I'm number 15. We're halfway through. Was looking at the body holes interesting? Yes, you don't see the body holes in Pompeii. What you see now, because it's been excavated, is you see the plaster cast that were left behind when the human bodies disintegrated. Within those casts are actual skeletons of the people that actually died in place, and you can see them as they fell, exactly where they fell when they died 2,000 years ago in 79 AD. And then, okay, so number 16, Andrew, how did the top blow off? I'm guessing you're referring to Mount Vesuvius, but let me just explain how volcanoes work. The volcano is like it's under the earth, of course. There's lava and magma, and it's very, very hot liquid rock, and it is in a subduction zone, they call in geology, in which a piece of the Earth's crust slides under another piece of the Earth's crust. And in that sliding, it pushes the magma up. And so it will build up and build up and build up over time. And as it's pushing through, bubbles are building up in the lava. And sort of like, it would sort of like be if you get a Coke can or a Coca-Cola or a soda can and you shake it up. And what's going to happen if you shake up a soda and then you open it up? It's going to spew everywhere. Well, that's kind of how it works with a volcano, except for it's instead of soda, you're going to get hot rock and gas just blowing up everywhere, and that's exactly how it happens. So, so it builds up so much over time, Andrew, that that literally the whole top of the mountain blows up, and then there is a hot uh, force of gas called a pyroclastic flow that goes down the mountain at about 300 miles an hour. So there's no way that people could have gotten out of the way. And the temperatures, again, range somewhere between 700 and 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So literally, if this gas hit you, this hot air hits you, and gases and rock, it's gonna boil your body instantly. It's gonna fry you instantly. So be like putting your body in a microwave oven and turning the button on. It's kind of gross to think about, but that's what happened. All right. So Quinn asked, did you find anything valuable at Pompeii? Yes, already answered that question. It was a Roman coin that dates to the 1st or 2nd century BC. Do you have anything from Pompeii? No, I don't have anything. I bought a souvenir jar, actually not a jar, but it's a vase, and it's a replica of a Greek vase that the Romans loved the Greeks and they would copy the Greeks. So I have a copy of a Roman Greek vase that I thought was pretty cool. All right, let's see here. Do you have anything valuable? Do you have anything from Pompeii? And James asks, how did they rebuild the city of Pompeii? And do any people live there now? No, they did not actually. After the city was destroyed in 79 AD, James, I believe one of the Roman emperors, I want to say it may have been, I forgot who it was, not Domitian. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I can't think of his name. But anyway, one of the Roman emperors actually um, sort of like took up a collection, for lack of a better word, and to get money to give to the people that survived Pompeii, but they never did go back and rebuild the city. So no, and there are no people living in the city now. Now there are people that live all around it in the countryside around the area, and people that live in Naples, nearby Naples. But there are currently no one. There's currently no one living in the city of Pompeii right now. How tall was Vesuvius? Ooh, I should have looked this up. I'm not exactly sure. I want to say about maybe 8,000 feet or so, but I may be wrong. I need to look this up. Um, why is Pompeii named Pompeii? Um, let's see here. What is the Pompeii? I think it comes from this is just going from pure memory. I just read about this several weeks ago, actually. Pompeii, I think, it has to do with the family, or there's a word that's connected to family. So I think it's like area of the family or something like that. I'm not sure. It's a surrounding area that it's named after, not the actual mountain itself, but the mountain takes its name for the surrounding area. So or excuse me, the city takes its name for the surrounding area of Pompeii. Hopefully that makes sense. That's very confusing. So I'm very, very sorry. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that off the top of my head, but I think it takes its name from a ancient Latin word that has to do with, uh, I remember the word family is in there somewhere, so I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to look that up and let you guys know later. I'm just going from the top of my head here. Uh, how hot was the lava? Again, over 1,000 degrees. How long did the lava flow? For 2 days, actually. And it wasn't just the lava, it was the ash and the what killed the people. And this is a question from Grace, by the way. How hot was the lava? Over 1,000 degrees. How long did the lava flow? It was probably, I want to say, at least 2 days. How far did it reach? I mean, it reached almost all the way to Pompeii. Although Pompeii wasn't covered in lava, if it was covered in lava, then it probably wouldn't be preserved. You'd have to dig and break the rock, because lava, when it hardens, turns into a rock, like a pumice stone. whereas ash is sort of like is really soft, kind of like snow, but it will fall down on the city and then preserve the city. And then the water goes on top of it and turns into dirt and mud, and it just locks everything in this kind of muddy, ashy type of thing. So that is a very, very good question, Grace. The lava was very hot. What is the largest volcanic mountain on Earth? Grace asked. I believe it is actually an island, one of the islands in Hawaii, and I can't remember the name of that island. I want to say it's Mauna Kea, because it actually, if you measure the height of the volcano from the base of the floor of the earth all the way up to the top, I believe it's actually Mauna Kea. I think it's Mauna Kea. I'm not sure the name of the island. It's one of the islands in Hawaii. I have a question or not a question, but I have something really cool to share with you guys. You may or may not know, what is the tallest volcano in the solar system? Does anybody know that? Well, I'll tell you, because one day I would love to go climb this in my spacesuit. It's called Olympus Mons, and it's actually located on Mars, the planet of Mars. And does anybody know how tall Olympus Mons is? Now, Mount Everest is not a volcano, it's just a mountain. Mount Everest is 29,000 feet tall. Olympus Mons is 60,000 feet tall. So it's literally twice as tall as Mount Everest, and it's a volcano on Mars. So I think that's pretty cool. Can you imagine if that thing blew up? I mean, the whole planet would probably explode. But anyway, yes. All right. So let's see. How deep was the ash? This is what Samuel asked. And how high from the ground did it pile up? 16 feet and probably higher in some places, maybe 20 feet. So by the time it was all done, the city was buried in about 16 to 20 feet of ash from the ground all the way to the top. What do the people look like with ash on them? If you've seen in the previous video, you can see the people, literally what killed the people was the hot pyroclastic flow that came down off the mountain when it was going very, very fast. Sorry, got some of them out there. And so, yeah, it was very, very destructive. It didn't actually melt the skin off, but it did burn them. And it was about, I think the scholars that I've read, when the hot flow hit Pompeii, it was about 400 to 700 degrees. And so it was enough to kill a person, but not actually melt their body totally. So their bodies just literally, they just kind of, when you die, your body, your muscles sort of tense up and you sort of cringe up like that. That's why the people, when they're laying on the ground, they're sort of cringed up, because their bodies had just hit this state of rigor mortis, they call it. And then they just die right there in place. And then the ash falls on them and then they're buried there in place. So kind of gross, but that's how it actually happens. So that's how the people with ash look like. You can see several of the images on that. Was there any Roman myth? This is a question from Christina. Was there any Roman myth about gods made up about what happened to the people of Pompeii? Not to my knowledge. To my knowledge, I'm not sure exactly if there was a Roman myth that was made up. I don't think so. Of course, people like today, if something happens today, people say, oh, well, the reason why this happened is because X, Y, and Z. And so I'm sure there were people who said that back then. It's just we don't have a lot of imagery, or excuse me, a lot of literature or inscriptions on this. I do know, interestingly, that the city of Pompeii, like every city, has its good parts and its bad parts. And there are some parts of Pompeii that, some pictures I couldn't show you, but people were doing bad things at Pompeii. And maybe it was God's judgment. We're not exactly sure. I mean, there's no way to know for sure. But in any case, yeah. So it was not to my knowledge that there were any Roman myths or made up about this. Christina also asked, this is number 28, I think, question 28, was any flesh discovered by Christina? No, not to my knowledge. I think the flesh pretty much disintegrated away, and the only thing we have left are the cast of the plaster. But we do have the skeletons inside of those plaster cast of the bodies. Were there any bones found at Pompeii? Yes. Many, many bones were found, because the bones were actually encased in the body cast when the archaeologists poured the plaster down in the molds. And then William asked, have you been to Pompeii? Did you get to do any archaeological expedition? Yes, I've been to Pompeii. And yes, I did get to do a little bit of archaeology. I was let behind the fence, and I got to take part just for about an hour or so in the excavation with some Italian archaeologists. They let me come in and sort of observe and take part of that. So that's cool enough for me, and I'll take it. But yes, I got to pull up a Roman coin from underneath the street from Pompeii before the first century. So I thought that was pretty cool. Number 31, were any of the people's bodies found standing up, like if they were walking when the ash covered them? Reed asked this question. The answer, Reed, is no. There were some though sitting upright. I think there was a picture that I showed of this guy. He sort of was sitting on the ground, and he had his legs up, and he was trying to, I guess, hide from the pyroclastic flow. But I don't think in any of the books or things I've studied, I've never seen any of the bodies actually standing up. So yeah, but there were some that were crouched down and some that were sitting upright, but not any standing up. Um, how fast did the city get buried? This is Miss McCarty asked this question. Um, there are differences of there's a couple of different really good documentaries on this that talked about this, and I think there were two. The eruption was for 2 days basically. It was in August of 79 A.D. and um, there were warnings, there were tremors and earthquakes that were happening before it. Keep in mind that the people of Pompeii did not know it was a volcano. I mean, they didn't technically have the geological knowledge that the thing was going to blow up. And so there were earthquakes that were happening. So nobody really knew what was going to happen. So most people just stayed there. But once the first eruption hit, then the ash began to fall on the city, and some big debris called pyroclast began to fall on the city, break things are starting to fall down. So that's when some people got up and left. And so in a matter of about 2 days, in the second blast, it was during the night of the second night, is when most of the city actually took place. So over a period of about 48 hours, I would say the city was completely buried under 16 to 20 feet of ash. And Miss McCarty asked us the other question, and I think I mentioned it just a second ago. Was there any warning? Yes, there were several earthquakes and tremors leading up to the eruption when it happened in the summer of 79 AD. So that is the questions that were answered, and there were a couple in there that I was not exactly sure about, so I do apologize about that. But hopefully, this helps you to get some of your questions answered. And if you have any follow-up questions, then please send those questions to your teachers, and they can get them to me, and I can try to answer them for you. But hopefully that helped. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad that I was able to share with you some of the amazing archaeological evidences of the Roman city of Pompeii, the discovery, the excavation, and the analysis of this amazing city. Archaeology is so cool. If you want to be an archaeologist, then definitely you should study ancient history. And there's so much more to be discovered, guys. And I hope and pray that this is a encouragement to you, and that you found this exciting and interesting as I do. But there's still more being excavated. So who knows what we're going to find in the future. But thanks again, guys. Hope you have a great day. Take care.